Estamos en vivo. Are we live? Perfect. Bienvenidos y welcome a cada uno de ustedes, to each one of you for being here this evening. We're right on time, so we can just give it a couple of minutes to get started, maybe 2 or 3. And then as you settle in, feel free to add any questions in the chat or any comments, and then we'll just give it a couple of minutes as we get started. Okay. Okay. They're telling me there's a delay on the stream, so we could probably start. That's fine. Okay. So my name is Mariana Corkil, and I'm the president of the Graduate School of Social Work Association at GSSWA, the student organization that's hosting this event. And we're here to celebrate Latinx Week at NMSU, an annual tradition the first 2 weeks of March, sponsored by Chicano Programs and Associated Student Body at NMSU. We're so excited to have students and faculty and members of the community. Thank you for coming on live. This is actually my first live event, so a little bit nervous here. In welcoming Yosimar Reyes, a nationally acclaimed poet and public speaker. Y también tenemos la oportunidad increíble de tener a one of our student poets, Jody Lopez Peacock, as we charlar about being Latino, Latinx as writers, leaders, poets in today's society, and just kind of how we take these injustices and experience and turn them into art. I would also really like to thank NMSU Accessibility Services for providing 2 interpreters today, Emily Newberry, who you see interpreting now, and BJ Thrash, and our IT support, Jonathan, who's helping us stream live on YouTube and Facebook. Bueno, we're gonna go around. This is a charla, so for those who don't know what a charla might be, it's the Spanish word for chat. Conversar, it's an informal conversation between people. So we're just gonna go and kind of give around and do some introductions. And then followed by Dr. Diaz, who is the director of the School of Social Work here at New Mexico State. He'll be giving some words, and then we'll continue on with Yosimar and Jody. So, you know me, this is, you can present yourself.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Logan Howard. I'm the vice president of GSSWA, working alongside Mariana. I grew up in New Mexico. I'm artist, musician, skateboarder, and a social worker. I'm excited for this event tonight and excited to be able to host Yosimar.
Well, you know me, and I'm gonna go, I'll go, Sarai, your turn. You might be muted, Sarai.
Oh, wow, I'm so sorry. My name is Sarai Bedell. I'm a current grad student here at NMSU for social work. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as non-binary, and I'm really excited to see the conversations we can have tonight.
Anayeli.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Anayeli Lopez, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Social Work and the advisor for GSSWA. And I am very excited and very proud of my students for putting this event together. And we're really looking forward to hearing Yosimar tonight. And so, yeah. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining. And yeah.
Dr. Carmona.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todas, a todes. Welcome everyone. Enjoy this fabulous event. I can't wait. I'm really excited and I'm very proud of the student group for putting this together. Bienvenidos.
Dr. Diaz.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Hector Luis Diaz, and as director of the School of Social Work, and I'm also acting department head for the Department of Public Health Sciences. And as a proud Hispanic, I want to welcome all of you to this celebration of art and culture. For me, it is very exciting to see students organizing to celebrate culture and engage in social, cultural, extracurricular activities. And I really hope that all of us will enjoy what promises to be a great and wonderful evening. So welcome again, and let's celebrate.
Thank you. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself? Nice. Thank you. Yes. We've got Jody.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jody Lopez, Peacock, and I'm really honored to be here today to speak next to Yosimar Reyes. It's an honor. Thank you very much. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an NMSU senior in the sociology program. I'm a chef, entrepreneur, mother, artist, and poet. And thank you again. Glad to be a part of this.
Thank you, Jody. BJ? I'm just going through everyone. All right, I think I got everyone. Go, Jody.
I'm a local sign language interpreter and have been here for eons. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And Yosimar?
Buenas tardes a todos. I'm so excited to be here and excited to be joining you. I wish I was where you're at, but you know, all the pandemic, pero estoy muy emocionado to be here and to share a little bit about my journey and my work and what I'm currently working on. So yeah, excited to be here.
So happy to have you. I don't know if I missed anyone. And for those of you, I guess, who don't know me, right? And so I'm the president, GSSWA, and I've been just focusing on organizing this. I'm half Mexican, half white, born in Tijuana. And bueno, I'm just like really excited to be celebrating here with these artists and bringing this to the community during COVID times. So Dr. Diaz, if you want to just kind of give any other words.
I just wanted to say that it is very nice to see you as a group taking the leadership in celebrating our culture. You know, I know that in the U.S.-Mexico border region, sometimes we neglect to do that. You know, we often concentrate so much on survival and trying to make it that we dedicate little time to smell the flowers and to celebrate the wonderful things that we have to share. So this is very nice, and to see blooming stars and future leaders coming together for a celebration of art and culture. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everyone being here. Bueno, Yosimar, me das el honor de dar tu little biography. I'll be giving it, if that's okay with you. Me das el honor. Okay. So for those of you who don't know about Yosimar Reyes, Yosimar, born in Guerrero, Mexico, and raised in Eastside, San Jose, California, Reyes explores the themes of migration and sexuality in his work. The Advocate named Reyes one of 13 LGBT Latinos changing the world, and Remezcla included Reyes on their list of 10 and up and becoming Latinx poets you need to know. His first collection of poetry, Four Colored Boys Who Speak Softly, was self-published after a collaboration with the legendary legendary Carlos Santana. His work has also been published in various online journals and books, including Mariposas, an anthology of queer modern Latino poetry, Floricanto Press, Queer in Aztlán, Chicano male recollection of consciousness and coming out, and the forthcoming Joto, an anthology of queer Chicano and Chicano poetry. Reyes was featured in the documentary Second Verse, The Rebirth of Poetry, and we'll be sure to be adding these in for all of you to see later. He is a Lambda, L-A-M-B, Lambda, literary fellow, as well as a recipient of Undocumented Poets Fellowship. Reyes previously served as artist in residence as the media and culture organization Define American. Reyes has toured and presented at university campuses across the United States. And he's here now. He is currently, well, here in virtual. He is currently working on his one-man show, Prieto, to premiere in the near future. Reyes holds a BA in creative writing from San Francisco State University. Bienvenido. Thank you so much for being here, Yosimar. I'm so excited to have you and to have all of you here. So.
Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. I'm really honored and excited to be here presenting my work. I feel that every time I get a chance to, you know, I think a lot of people read the bio and are like, wow, you know, bios are very interesting because, you know, it shows all the stuff that you've done. But I think ultimately for me, it's more like I'm trying to figure out what my positionality is in this world or in this country. And I think I've tried to develop, I think, a body of, I started doing poetry when I was 16 years old. At the time, I was a student at Latino College Preparatory Academy here in Eastside, San Jose, California, where I grew up. And I started writing poems simply because I wanted to understand my conditioning. And by understanding my conditioning, I was more like trying to understand that at 16 years old I was hitting a crossroads of identity, right? In which I am realizing that I'm poor. I'm realizing that I'm queer. I'm realizing that I'm undocumented. And so it feels like all these pressures and social pressures are just falling on me. So I feel like I'm a great case study for what happened to youth in these situations. But thankfully, and I think this is a bigger study. I think we're all nerds because we're in university and I always think of studies, cultural studies. But I think like I had an English teacher, and I don't know if maybe there's a relationship between English teachers and queers, but I had an English teacher that definitely took me under her wing and basically introduced me to a lot of books that reflected a similar experience. And then I just started writing. I started writing about these things that, especialmente in immigrant families, we talk a lot about vergüenza, and vergüenza translates to shame. So I started to investigate what shame was. And so I just started writing about those things and I started speaking them in front of a group of strangers. And then I realized that these strangers also related to them. So I realized, well, I'm not the only one that's a hot mess. I think there's a lot of people that just look put together and their bios look like they're put together, but they're really on these streets just, you know, try to get it together. So all this to say that all of these poems come from a place of me trying to investigate and better name my situation and my conditioning. So I'm going to start off with the first poem. This first poem is titled Undocumented Joy. And, I feel like I always talk about being undocumented and I don't mean to, but it just so happens that it's a hot topic. But I wrote this poem because, right now it's 2021. It's very interesting because today, actually, there was legislation that was introduced into Congress, right? It's a historical moment, a legislation that was introduced into Congress to legalize DACA recipients or dreamers, whatever. But, I've been kind of living this life for the last 20 years. So we are definitely, I feel like the Dream Act is like that boyfriend that you think is going to change, but girl, it has been 20 years and he's trash. So we got to date other bills. Okay. I'm just going to say that. Shout out to the people doing the work to get that passed. So until I see effective change, then I'll get hyped about it. So I wrote this poem called Undocumented Joy. I don't remember crossing, so I cannot tell you about the journey. Sometimes I close my eyes and imagine a pitch black sky with 1,000 little stars. I imagine a poetic crossing, my abuela's hand tugging my arm, a rush of wind, abuelo leading the way. I imagine crossing without fear, just dreams, and my abuela's goals to raise my brother and me into our hardworking men. I cross without the trauma latching onto my body. I cross unscarred, even though mis viejitos tell me how they had to stuff the 4 of us under the backseat of a car. Sometimes I wish I could remember, then maybe, just maybe, I will have a different story to tell. I can only tell you how poor we were living in that small apartment in the East Side, how embarrassed I was to invite my friends over, even though we all lived like this. I can only tell you how proud I was of my abuela who asked me to teach her English, scribble on the refrigerator doors. Sometimes you can see the residue of the markers used to teach her basic words like thank you, God bless you, and you're welcome. I wish you would ask about the memories I had before my identity became political, about the laughs, the joy, the things I love, about the way I have managed to survive. I wish you would focus on the magic that it is to take the world's trash and make it into art. I wish I could tell you about the journey, but all I know is that I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. This is my home now. So I came to the United States when I was 3 years old. So most of my development was in the US. But I grew up with my grandparents. I didn't grow up with my mom or my dad. I grew up with 2 viejitos. And the thing about older immigrants, it's that they try, even though they come to a new country, they're trying to recreate their old town and that's the walls of that small apartment. So my house was, it was like I would step outside of my house and it was the hood and it was the city and it was the United States, but then I would close the door and it was like little Mexico in my house. So I would I felt like I was stepping into different realms. And I'm so grateful for that. I grew up in the early 90s in California. And if you remember anything about the early 90s, specifically 1994, in which we had Prop 187 by Governor Pete Wilson at the time. Pete Wilson at the time was propagating this kind of save our state kind of legislation in which he said that, undocumented immigrants were kind of exploiting resources and we shouldn't have access to public education. They always blame it on undocumented people. And I really don't know why, because we're just chilling. Like, we're just chilling and people just blame us on everything. Like, I'm sure like it could be like a dust storm and someone's like, there's undocumented people walking by. So I think for me, one of the things, I think 1994 was an important year because it kind of set the tone for all this like xenophobic legislation that we started seeing and that still manifests today, right? And I was living that. That's the reality that we were living under. But what I found very amazing is that my family was able to focus. We would watch the news, but we're here to work. We're not here to feel any type of way about how people talk about us. And so what I found very amazing is that I arrived in 1991 to this country. Right now, we are in 2021, and I have survived all those years. And I think that for any undocumented person watching this, or if you're out there, to survive undocumented in a country that passes legislation that makes it for you to want to self-deport, I just want to tell you that you're a genius and you need to put that on your CV and you need to be out here claiming how genius you are, because it takes a level of, thought to do that. So I think for me now in 2021, I'm going full force and realizing that, we have survived so much and now it's time for us to take care of each other. And that's what these poems are now. Poems that I want to create that give people a mental break, that give people happiness or joy or make people laugh. That way we're not feeding this void of all the tragic stories that we are, because I think we're more than that. So I'm going to share this little quick thing to talk a little bit about my process as I'm thinking of of this. But basically, I developed this kind of philosophy in like undocumented storytelling that I think basically encompasses the idea that I want to believe that as undocumented storytellers and poets, we are more than tragic stories. I feel like I don't really want to talk about, right now in this moment, I don't really want to talk about the anxiety I have with deportation and none of that, which is a reality. I want to talk about happy things and joyful things y todo eso. Well, we're gonna read some of those poems later, right? And thankfully right now, I'm promoting this book because this is my homegirl, Charla Correjo, so she wrote The Undocumented Americans, the first undocumented writer to be longlisted for National Book Award. Okay, she's a genius. And one of the quotes that she starts with the book is, I fucking hate thinking of migrants and butterflies because butterflies can't fuck a bitch up. And I think that that is so punk rock, and that is the energy that I'm stepping 2021 in, that I am not a butterfly. I'm a roach, okay? I want to disgust you. I want to scare you. So I think these are like the ideas of what I'm thinking, right? And then within my work as immigrants, I start thinking about what does words mean. This is me when I was 2 years old. We took this picture in Mexico before I came to the United States. And there's a great quote by Maya Angelou that says, I believe that a word is a thing. It is of non-visible and audible only for time it's there. It hangs in the air, but I believe it's a thing. I believe it goes it goes in the upholstery and then in the rugs, into my hair, into my clothes, and finally into my body. I believe that words are things and I live on them. I love this quote, and I think I apply it to my own understanding of what undocumented is, because for so long, we had to reclaim. Before undocumented, we were illegal. It was so common to call people illegal. And even right now, we're having a discussion with the term alien and non-citizen, because we're changing that with this new administration. But the word undocumented is very interesting because a lot of us reclaimed it to find a source of power in it. But I like to remind people that undocumented is not an identity. Clearly, it's not in my body. It's not in my hair. Like, it's nothing. So I'm very conscious about having that label police my imagination and police where I visualize myself and my family, or where I think that I am gonna thrive in. So I think about that. I'm very careful about those words. And I'll deal with this quote and then I'll just get into the poems. But I also love this quote by Toni Morrison. This is my abuelita, who I'm always repping. But this is her and her sister. They reunited this last summer after like 28 years they haven't seen each other. She was finally my tia abuela was finally able to get a visa to come visit us in the United States. And I think that moment really defined what my mission and what I want to do, especially the pandemic, being that the pandemic has affected immigrants, specifically undocumented immigrants, at a very disproportionate rate. And just how sad that, how sad that so many people are returning home in caskets. And I think that's very tragic. They came to this country to work and are returning in a casket, sometimes as ashes, so I'm thinking about that. The various sisters function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language and you spent 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you stretch that up. Somebody says you have no kingdom, so you stretch that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. I think it took me, this is where I'm at right now. I'm not distracted anymore. I'm not really interested in convincing people. I realize that I'm not interested in convincing people in liking me or believing that I'm human. And I think right now it's taking care of the community that I come from and doing poems that are gonna lift and build the self-esteem of those immigrants. I think that if you are somebody that believes in caging children, separating families, if you're somebody that looks at these images and has a disdain just because we are not part of this country, I think you need to go to therapy, girl. Because you don't want to die like that. So hopefully you do, or talk to God and ask, where did I learn xenophobia? And what is it, the fear that I really have? Well, I'll just leave you with those tips because I already focused too much on you. But anyways, I want to continue with these poems that I'm conceptualizing. So I have a one-man show that's supposed to come out, but the pandemic happened, but we're gonna hopefully this year I'm able to launch it. And one of the things that in the piece that I want to do is talk a little bit more like how these madrosos immigrants are. I feel like my mission is to document hot mess immigrants because we're out of control. But I'm gonna read this piece about my grandfather. It's called Mi Viejito. I wrote it a couple of years ago, but it's talking more about what it means to be an older immigrant in this country. Abuelito is drunk again. You can tell by the songs that he's playing on the radio, the way his rest face on his end, staring blankly into the wall. It's almost like he's trying to absorb the feelings this song produced, somber and dark emotions coming from rough voices through the radio. He looks peaceful like this, remembering the lands in which he first heard these songs. Mi Viejito is old and wrinkled like the brown paper bags the wind blows down the street. He's been the only man alive in my life that has not left me behind, stuck around to raise this brown boy into the man I am today. I'm about 9 years old when he sits me down and tells me that when I grow up, he's gonna buy me a gun and a white horse because these are the things men of power own. I'm frightened because I have no idea what I would do if I did have power. These are his symbols of masculinity. He tells me that it doesn't matter that I've never met my father or that my mother is not around because as long as I have him, I will never feel hunger. He's a man of honor and respect, carries himself with posture. I like the way his eyes shine when he tells me he's proud of me, the way he boasts to his drunken compadres, how I speak English so well, and how I'm gonna be a great man one day. He likes me to recite poems to him, even though he doesn't understand them, even though he doesn't know that the poems I write about how I struggle with my own manhood and how for so long I felt insecure of being around other men because of the queerness in my voice. At the night, my abuelito tells me that it's my duty to carry my name with honor and pass these stories down to my seeds. I carry myself to sleep. Vicente Fernandez on the background singing Volver, Volver. I knew then that I would never be like these men on the radio who sang about pain but were respected, men who were allowed to express their emotions because we were drunk. Cuando mi abuelito toma, I get sad because I know he's hurting. There's a pain inside his chest, and with every song, you can sense how his heart is slowly crumbling. He speaks of Mexico to me, telling me it's my duty to remember. He has nothing but death to look forward to, and somehow all his dreams have manifested themselves in me. In the smoothness of my skin, he sees it's Mexico, a young and careless Mexico who was free to romanticize women and shower in rivers, unafraid of the connection between his nude body and water. I can only imagine how horrible it must feel to be caged in this country, stuck between concrete buildings of ghettos when you have grown up surrounded by milpas and soil. He drinks quietly and sheds tears. These songs bring back memories of a youth lived too fast, time gone. They bring back Mexico, the feelings of fleeing a country of home. I like it when he tells me where I come from. Cuando me platica de las montañas, de las playas, de la tierra. I'm so far from knowing what Mexico is. I'm just a silly city boy that thinks he understands the world, ignorant like an American. And it is painful to see how Abuelito misses his land. So he drinks, tells stories, and I cry myself to sleep, hoping that one day we will be back home, hoping that one day I will be man enough to understand why he drinks so much. He tells me it's my duty to remember, my duty to tell these stories to my seeds. And since I don't know if I will ever live to convince a child, I'll tell them to anyone that is willing to hear. I come from a legacy of men who are silent, poets that only dare to speak their truth when intoxicated. It's because of him that I tell stories. He raised us on the verses of unknown poets. Yo quisiera que las mujeres se volvieran lagartijas para matarlas a pedradas y quedarme con sus hijas. Simple verses that will light up a room. Mi abuelo is short, dark, bald, carries bags under his eyes. He is the Mexico I long to remember. It was his breath, his arms, his legs. It was his very back that carried me here. I love my grandpa. He was a hot mess. He was like the patriarch of the patriarch. But you know, like the thing with Latino families is that, like, girl, No. Dios lo tenga en su santa gloria, but that man gave us definitely a hard time. But it was very interesting. Sometimes I ask myself if all his machista ways and me being queer was like the way the universe was gonna like, I'm gonna set justice, or I'm gonna create my own sense of balance in this family. My grandpa passed away 3 years in February. It's gonna be 3 years since he passed away. And what's interesting enough is that he made the decision to return back to Mexico on his own accord. And so I remember, and it's very interesting that we are kind of experiencing this virus, and people and there's so much death that is around us. And to a certain extent, most Americans are experiencing how undocumented people bury their dead. Because when my grandpa passed away, none of us could travel to his burial. None of us could travel to his funeral. So we had to bury him over FaceTime and Facebook Live. And I think it's very interesting that in this moment, that's exactly this kind of social distancing is something that is second nature to undocumented immigrants in this country. And so I think that is also the thing that got me questioning of what is the sacred things that we lose when we choose to remain in this country. And I'm wondering if the trade-off is equal, right? If me choosing to remain in this country one day will make up for all the things that I've already lost. And a lot of people always ask me, why don't you just go back? And I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it's too late. I just scared that it might be too late since I came here when I was 3 years old. And I'm 32 now. So she grown. This next poem is more funny. My mom was around, pero mi mamá remarried and built her own life. But I had those type of Latino moms that were passive aggressive. I'm out here really spilling the beans with my family. Okay, I'm sorry. They're probably gonna hear me. But I have those moms that, I feel like now that I'm older, and because, we're millennials and we've learned how to talk about anxiety, about interpersonal communications, we've learned how to be like, okay, what I'm trying to understand, how to conflict resolution. But my mom never had that, because she was like those type of moms that would wake up at 6 a.m. smashing dishes. And then you would be like, can you just tell me what's wrong? It will help us all. But she was also very about cleanliness. Like my mom is the reason why I don't like sweating, or why I don't, if I go hiking, I need, I'm very cautious of where I step because I don't want to get dirty. So this poem is titled Dirty. Shout out to the moms that traumatizes about being dirty. Mommy used to bathe us twice a day. She would scrub the darker parts of our bodies to wash away poverty. She would take out our piedra pomo and she would scrub our elbows and our knees. She scrubbed our little hands, took the earth beneath our fingernails, and warned us to stay clean. She would often say, ¿Qué va a decir la gente? Esta mujer muy elegante y sus mocosos bien mugrosos. She would neatly part our hair, and when one of our stubborn little pelitos would not listen, she would place saliva in her hand and made it stay in place. She wouldn't want me to be like Tony, who smelled like pee, whose mocos used to dry up under his nose. They used to call him piojoso at school because you could see the lights jumping like there was a party on his head. Más vale que no se te peguen esas costumbres, gordo. Ven que hueles a chivo. She would then run to the fridge. She would take out a limon and she would slice it in half. She would rub each half under my armpit. The burning sensation would make me scream. Estate quieto, she would say. She ironed my shirts, pants, underwear, and socks. Mommy, who was left alone to raise two brown boys, dark as dirt, made sure that the rest of the world never had an excuse to call us dirty. So I think for me, one of the things that I do try to write about often too is about exactamente pobres pero limpios. That's a thing, right? I don't know. I think it's like a poverty conditioning. Poor people, if you're a poor girl, let's go to therapy. But I think I try to write a lot about poverty too, because I feel like there's I haven't uncovered too much literature that explores it in a deeper sense, in a deeper way. And I want to position ourselves in that environment because one is the conditioning of being undocumented, on top of the violence that is poverty mixed in, that creates these scenarios for family dynamics that oftentimes are not conducive for us to move forward in this country. And so, yeah, this next poem is titled Hombre. Hombre. My body is just like my father's, chaparro y moreno. I look in the mirror and see him, though I only know him in picture. When my mommy calls me beautiful, I cannot help but wonder if she means it. How can she find beauty in a man that resembles a heartbreak? I've grown into a man with no guidance, created blueprints for my masculinity out of bearing witness to its violence. My body is like my father's, with the same ability to bruise an eye, punch a wall, become enraged. I was raised in a culture where walking in my skin is already a sign of power. Often I wonder if this queerness I embody is a byproduct of my father's absence or a way the universe asked my mother's forgiveness. Um, I identify as a cisgender male, right? But when I was growing up, I feel like I was everybody would always tell me to be a boy. And I think this happens to a lot of gay boys when you grow up, especially in Latino households or um in in the hood. Everybody kind of polices your gender. So everybody will always tell me like, siéntate bien, habla como hombre, tienes que ser hombre. And then I would be looking at the men in my family and I was like, girl, I don't want to be like that. They smell, they're lazy, son borrachos. I was like, girl, no. Pobres, feos y celosos. Is that really what you want me to be, girl? No. And then I would look at my primas and my tias and I would think they were so pretty. I'm like, they're so pretty and they're so cute. Why are they out here with that? But then I learned, that oftentimes, you know, men like that bruise women's self-esteem so they can keep them. But I think I started realizing that I didn't want that. And even though I love these men in my family and they were dealing with a lot, I realized that there were some patterns that I just did not want to repeat. And one of them being that. And so I think being around my abuelita helped me really understand that I didn't want to. I wanted to end that. So, I went to San Francisco State University, the birth of ethnic studies, right? And I remember I took like a feminist studies class, and then I would come to my house. I would go back home in the East Side, and I would tell my grandma, Abuelita, don't you want to divorce my grandpa? Like, if you want to leave him, I just want to let you know that you have my full support and I will help you, like, make the paperwork so you can stay with the terrenos because they belong to you. So I was trying to end their marriage, but it didn't work. My grandma, I can't. But I think I became one of those students and then I would come and then I'm like, Grandma, have you heard of all these feminists? I would name him. And I'm like, did you know that as a woman, you deserve to have your own things and your own voice? And then my grandma would be like, me gusta cuando me platicas así. Like, she would be my grandma's a feminist, but she was just like out here. But since my grandpa has passed, I think she's realized that now she has to live for her own. Like, she doesn't really need to provide for none of us. Like, now it's like, Grandma, what makes you happy? What do you want to do today? Like, where do you want to go? And I think it's realizing that she's realizing that the world belongs to her and that's where she needs to be. Right now I became the full-time caretaker of my grandmother. She's 86. And I think most of the stuff that I see legislation and she gets very excited because my grandmother is undocumented too. I think and so she gets excited and it's very hard for me to get excited because I'm jaded. I'm like, that's not gonna happen. But I think right now we're having the conversation of what's next because I feel like for a lot of undocumented viejitos, that song de la Jala de Oro para los Tigres del Norte, it rings very true because they're caged old little birds in this country, always longing to return. And I think, I feel like I have a lot of freedom because I know how to navigate this country and I can travel. I feel like I've traveled all over the United States. I've traveled more than citizens. But I don't think my grandma finds that same pleasure. So I think for me, it's like how now it's time to open the cage and let her fly wherever she wants to, knowing that we're not in the condition that she's going to be longing or needing anything. So I think about, that's my process right now, like in 1 to 2 years, where are we going to be? And I think right now with the legislation that Biden is kind of proposing for citizenship, it would take about 8 years, right, to be recognized. But I already waited over 20, and I don't know if my grandma has 8 years to start living the way she wants to. So these are the things that I think about and process. So thinking about that, I wrote this poem called A Poem So the Weight of This Country Does Not Crush You. And I started thinking about all those people that do have made the choice to return to their home countries, because it is what it is. And I think a lot of times we look at people that self-deported or left as an act of, oh, I failed, or as an act of like, I didn't make it in this country. But sometimes, I view it as an act of protecting your dignity, and putting yourself first. So this poem's a poem so the weight of this country does not crush you. Some days you may wake up sad. Some days you may wake up frustrated. Some days you may wake up tired. Some days you may wonder if it's worth it. Some days you may question your own growth. Some days you may think how immense the world is to be caged in this country, to be subjugated to all this abuse. Some days you just want to breathe, and baby, I'm here to remind you to sit in those moments, sit in that whirlpool, but just know there are people like me picking up the load when you can't. There are people like me pushing so the weight of this country does not crush you. And there are people like you who will fight when I can't. And we will take turns pushing against all these walls. I got your back and you got mine. And in the scheme of things, that anything else matter, even if our fight is unfruitful, we will depart with our dignity intact. We will depart knowing that this country is losing a prized possession. This country is losing the gift of our resilience. We will watch them as they tear into each other's skins, and we will thank the heavens we never turned into beasts like them. So yeah, I think this is this is kind of like I'll leave it here. I might go on time. I'll leave it here, and then we can. Okay, I'm good. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, you're good. You're good on time. We're fantastic on time.
Okay, perfecto. I just want to be mindful of time. So I'll read this next poem. My family, I think one of the things that I think about is a lot about ancestors and who are the people that we just recently moved. I moved back to San Jose, and I was like, I gotta get my family out the hood because drive-bys are cute, but no, like it's not normal. We cannot normalize that. So we gotta move out. And then my grandma had a whole like episode about I'm gonna miss my neighbors. Like I don't want to live in quiet places because of the Night Stalker y todo este desmadre, right? So I was like, girl, why is it? Like we just love that. Nos gusta el desmadre. So when you take us out and it's quiet, we're locking the doors, right? And so I started thinking of like, wow, like it's so different, and I'm so blessed and grateful. Every day I'm grateful that I get to build poems, and that I get to read poems to people, and that I can help support my family through poems. And I think of all the people that are kind of propelled us, or the people that we couldn't bury. I think a lot about my grandpa, my tío, and a little sister that I had. So I wrote this poem thinking about them and the way they kind of are guiding us in this country. So this is poems titled Day of the Dead. I had a sister once. She is dead now. She passed when she was 3 when she passed. I was 7. I don't remember much, just that a drunk driver dragged her body in front of my mom's house, and from one day to the other, she was gone. Mommy still cries, prays that she doesn't lose any more of us. They placed a stop sign on her honor on Tammy Lee and Crucero Drive, a stop sign too late. She's no longer here. It was 1995, the same year Selena died. There's a song Selena sings to remind me of my little sister. Adilene was her name. We received a call. He is dead. My tias cried over the phone. Mi tío, abuela's only son. It was cancer that slowly took over his body. Pesticides from working in the fields in Mexico, abuela said. We gathered around our living room, the phone on loudspeaker. El Rosario was repeated. We couldn't be at his burial. None of us have the papers to travel freely. Abuela talks about to herself sometimes, asks for forgiveness for being stuck here. There's an altar now on the corner where she keeps a Bible, a portrait of my tío, watches us now, go in and out our small apartment. Our future is uncertain, so we wait to whoever is next. Abuelo died on a Monday. No one knew how sick he was. The last time I saw him, it didn't look how I remembered him, full of life y travieso. He looked tired. He left the US on his own free will. Let the record show that did not kick him out. He grew tired and got on a plane and left. At the airport, it was sort of like a small death. Most of us knew we would never see him again. None of us have the papers to travel freely. We watched the plane take off, Abuelito on a mission to soar the sky, the first time he's ever been on a plane. We cried on the ride back from SFO. Our heartbreak sang like Los Pancho's song. We buried him via FaceTime. The hardest thing I've had to do, watch his casket be lowered, knowing he is gone. I have ancestors watching over me, a little sister, mi tío, mi abuelito. I honor them in their memory. Life has been hard on us, but still we keep hope that one day we will see them again. So yeah, this is kind of I'm giving you all the drama. I feel like I'm giving you a really good immigrant telenovela right now, because we have definitely been through some things. But I think it's just the human condition and the human spirit, right? And I think hopefully these poems are universal in the sense that they're specific to a family, but I think it's universal in the feelings of longing and the feelings of loss. And I think a lot of people have felt kind of identified with some of them. So I'm really grateful for that. Can I pause? Mariana, do you mind if I pause right now? Porque siento que se me está poniendo, se me está oscureciendo y voy a salir un shadow.
Sí, podemos pause porque como hay tanto para procesar. Like, that's a lot. You never, let's see. Chat on our end, so please feel free to keep adding them.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's because I was like, okay, I'm getting dark. Let me put some production value into this.
No, don't worry. I have a ring light going and everything. So shout out to my girl Vanessa for providing it. We're getting so many messages. That is so powerful. All your words, Yosimar, de verdad, like los limones, like I remember oh my God, just so powerful, everything. I don't know if anyone else who wants to say anything in the Zoom.
Yeah. If you have any questions, you can feel to type them in. I'm gonna read this other silly poem that I kind of wrote. Okay, I wrote this poem because, one of the things that people always tell me, right, for the solving my predicament is like, why don't you just get married? Like, you should just get married. And let me tell you something, for all the people that are out here, if you're gonna suggest that I should get married, please give me 3 candidates or 5 candidates. Come with resources, because like that kind of suggestion is like somebody that's unemployed and you tell them, girl, find a job. Can you tell me where to apply? Do you have resources? Is there a center? Is there something? And honestly, as millennials in this country, research shows that most millennials are anti-marriage because we don't really believe in the sanctity of that, which is great. And I'm here for the progress, but that is messing with immigrants' lives because I'm ready to marry 3 months in. Like, I'm ready, I'm set, let's go. So I think a lot of people suggest where to get married, but honestly, finding a good husband in this country, I think it's harder than getting citizenship, quite frankly. So shout out to the people that have found their husbands and their partners. Felicidades. And the other thing is that I'm a Virgo, so I definitely have a high criteria. So I'm not just about to marry anybody, girl. What's your credit score? Can you co-sign on a lease? You know what I mean? And research shows that most Americans are living in debt. So there you have it, girl. I don't know. So so I wrote this poem called why don't you just get married? It's silly, it's really corny, but I was like, oh, I'm just gonna write this because I think it's just hilarious. I don't want to have to marry a citizen. I want the day I fall in love to be without me thinking of nation or allegiance. I want it to be how the white girls do it in Sex and the City, carelessly running to New York City, fucking everybody until one day I trip and I fall in love, to be without me thinking if he has a social, I think he can keep me here. I don't want the pressure of thinking that after 27 years of living here, he is a blessing and opening a crack in the system for me to get in. I don't want to think of green cards or visas, of finally having the foundation to step on. I want my loving to be an option, not a way out of this prison. I want the day I set on foot on an altar, gaze into my lover's eyes, be the day I know that papers don't matter. Girl, that is all. Honestly, that's just poetry. It's fictional because trust and believe that if you are watching this and you do have a good social and credit, holla at me. I'm telling you, so you this madre. But I think all I'm trying to do with this kind of thing is also, I think a lot of us who've survived a lot of things use a lot of dark humor, and I think that's very interesting to the way humor, and the way we tell stories and the way we laughed at our lives. I don't know, I think that because even my family, they're super funny, and I'm like, I don't know if somebody would walk in would think it's appropriate that we're laughing at these things, but I think I really appreciate it. And I think where I get my sense of humor comes from the fact that when I was growing up, people would try to make fun of me, but what they couldn't, because I was reading books. I was like a hood Matilda. So if you mess with me, like, I was gonna make metaphors out of you. So I think that helped me. Let's see. I think I'll read one last one and then we can move to Jody, because I'm so excited to listen to Jody's work. And then we'll come back to El Desmadre. Let me see. Okay. So a couple of years, it's just, there's just so much stuff that happens. Like, I don't know if you've been watching the news today, but in El Centro, which is in like San Diego area, California, there was like a huge news about these migrants. There was 25 migrants traveling in a SUV, and there was a collision with a trailer, and I think there was like 17 casualties, and it was because they were being chased by the Border Patrol. This just happened this week. And so I think of migrants who come to this country, escaping all this, and to return home, the journey of returning in a casket like that. And then I also think of the people that watch these news, and these are articles that are kind of being written, and there's people who I'd never read the comments, but there's people who willingly type out paragraphs and arguments that's what they deserved. And so I think about that, and I think that makes me a little bit, and then you go to their profiles and you realize that the people typing that are school teachers, our principals, superintendent, our people in your community, our people that you are surrounded by. And I don't know, it really messes with me. So a couple of years ago, there was an image that went viral, and it was of a dad that was crossing the river and put his daughter on his back as he was swimming across, and they sadly did not make it. That image became super viral. A lot of pro-migrant organizations were using it to talk about the plight of undocumented immigrants or people crossing. But I just started thinking about how trauma and all those things don't serve a purpose. Like, that doesn't serve, because those, again, you can't win with people that believe in that. Like, that's a spiritual quest. That's something really deep that you need to. Xenophobia means that it's a fear that you have. I always think about xenophobia as those Maury episodes where the people are scared of spiders, or people that are scared of oranges, and Maury just throws them in a room full of oranges or spiders. So maybe the people that are xenophobic just need to be thrown in a room full of immigrants and then we just touch them. But because I do believe in spells, and I do believe in, energy and stuff. And not that I'm a bruja, but, I was like, you know what? Let me cast a spell on people that are out here in the comments. So I wrote this spell. The most heartbreaking thing about bearing witness to children in cages, a drowned father and a daughter, another ICE raid, another tweet, and about providing toothpaste or soap while in detention is the reality that this country breeds citizens with no humanity. How spiritually bankrupt must one be to ignore, to sit there and say they should have done it the legal way? May the ghosts of our ancestors come back like a storm, a heavy wind, an earthquake, and fall upon the homes of those with venom on their lips. May the ghosts of our people remind them who God really is. You cannot stop us because we do not die in vain. A storm is coming and you cannot hide from the rain. I know that's not very intense, but I'm just saying, don't mess with me, girl. I'll write a spell for you. So I think I just want to say that, as I'm closing up, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and to go in deeper into the poems. I think poetry was definitely an avenue that helped me name and helped me process all these situations. And I still feel like, I haven't published anything since my first collection. And I'm still working to see what is the next story that I want to work on, or what is the next project that I want to do. But I think for me right now, I love reading. I love books. I started a book club, the Yossi Book Club. So we're recommending books all the time. But I think for me, poetry and stories and todo esto really reminds me that we need these. These are like things that are like historical. These are artifacts that, boost our self-esteem. And I think, for poets who are out there and people that are documenting where we come from or our legacies, I would encourage you to continue to do that. And most of us are, I think I read a book by Leonard Peltier, where I really like the metaphor that he used. He used the fact that, everybody wants to be extraordinary, but there's a lot of power in being ordinary. I think we're so common and we're so ordinary, and we live so ordinary situations that if we're able to tap into the ordinary, we connect to a bigger, broader world. And I think these poems are for immigrants that don't want to be I don't want to inspire. Most of us don't want to be inspiring. Most of us don't want to be resilient. Most of us don't want to be overachieving. We kind of want to be basic, but we're forced to kind of be this, because if we're not, we don't survive. But I'll just leave you with that. And then I'm excited to hear Jody. So thank you so much for having me. And then I'll come back for the Q&A section.
Thank you so much, Yosimar. Getting work on spotlight here. Okay, thank you so much, Yosimar. That was incredibly powerful. We got so many messages, just like the relatedness, and extremely powerful. Well, we're pretty good on time, so we're going to continue. We have the amazing opportunity to have a student speaker here today to share her work with us. And so Jody Lopez, Peacock, is an NMSU senior in the sociology program. She is a chef, an entrepreneur, and a devoted mother. Jody is New Mexico born, raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and called Albuquerque, New Mexico home for over a decade. She is a feminist and a social justice advocate, especially related to BIPOC and environmental protection and sustainability issues. Jody is currently pursuing knowledge and training in sustainable cultivation of the earth and indigenous ancestral healing practice. Yes, she is a regular volunteer for local farms and gardens and other community needs. Jody is an artist, writer, and performer with a focus in street art and poetry. Her art is a mechanism to share her experience and voice as an indigenous woman. Bienvenida, Jody. Thank you so much for being here and like sharing your work with us, with the community, with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be alongside Yosimar. That was incredibly powerful and so relatable on so many levels. And sí soy bruja, Yosimar. But thank you for that spell. I'll keep that in mind in the future. But I want to talk a little bit about my poem before I present it and kind of touch on like that feminist aspect of myself, because it's a huge part of me. It's a huge part of my experience. And Yosimar touched on it in the gender aspect of that. The experience of being a woman, if living in a female body, is a dynamic one. And I know that we can all, as women, relate to that. And unfortunately, that dynamic is often one of vulnerability, though it can be one of power as well. But, in my experience, that gender dynamic is often toxic. And especially as a brown woman, I think, whether it be in a passing interaction or a longstanding relationship, women are often treated as if, they cease to exist being human beings and instead exist as a collection of parts and are objectified down to parts that serve or are of service to needs. And though I'm grateful now and blessed to be in a valued and in a positive, healthy, equal relationship with, an indigenous person who he also understands that gender dynamic and that struggle of not fitting into the mold of being, woman and being man. That was not always the case. And I wrote this poem during a time of transition from a really unhealthy, toxic environment, which I think a lot of women and indigenous women, brown women of color, experience. And in that situation, I was fully objectified. And I experienced, and we experience, I think, on some of us on a regular basis, varying degrees, monthly, weekly, or daily, that objectification. And in this one such instance, being broken down into parts, I began reflecting on how I'm seen by others or not seen. And ultimately, I reflected on how I see myself, and both visually and spiritually, through my third eye, my bruja, my spirituality, the perspective of my essence or spirit. And this poem was the culmination of that reflection. And it served as, I think a lot of poets can relate as, therapy is empowerment and healing, as poetry often has throughout my life. So that's a little bit about it. And now I want to go ahead and share that with you guys. Do you see me? My shoulders are broad, steadfast and proud, having weathered 1,000 storms. all the while resting below my long and graceful neck, forever reaching for the stars. My rib cage is grand, capable of containing 1,000 winged beings, caging them and stealing their flight with its indeterminate will, but it would never do such a thing, and resigns to hold my heavy heart. My breast once nourished body and mind, full with nature's sweet, innocent perfection and ready to pour, a time now honored and remembered by the silky lines left behind, like the river's ripples on the shore. My hips are wide and infinitely full, fortified by the mystery, joy, and energy they have sustained and bore. My legs are short and strong, capable of carrying the weight of love and the weight of loyalty across the expanse of the universe and throughout the secret realms of time, sometimes fast and sometimes slow, but never faltering. My mind is always open. My mind is always full, filling with color, knowledge, and soul, a vessel like a depthless pool. So that's my poem. And like I said, it's definitely came from a place of healing and reflection on myself as not just a visual objectified human, but as an actual vessel for soul and experience.
Wow, Jody, thank you so much for sharing that. That's extremely powerful.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Oh my goodness, yes, of course. And here with Yosimar, si puedes dar algunas,
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody.
Please do.
I'm so happy that we get to share space, and hopefully, I think I think one of the beautiful things that as poets is that we're definitely representing, and I think speaking from these experiences, and I think a lot of people find themselves reflected in your words and everything that you have to share. And I'm so grateful that you were like, yes, I am a bruja. And I think, I would have hoped that we would be in the same space together, sharing space. But I think, if anything, life is a journey, and I'm sure that we're gonna come back a juntarnos otra vez. Muchas gracias. I'm so happy to meet you.
Thank you. I'm honored to share this space with you.
Okay.
So Mariana, do you want to go into the Q&A, or what are you thinking of?
Yeah, let's go into Q&A. Y si tenemos tiempo, if you have any other, any other poems, we can do that. So Sarai here is going to be helping us moderate the Q&A. No sé si quieres ir primero.
Yeah, disculpe, I'm doing my best with names, pero it looks like our first question was submitted a little while ago when we were talking about like the dark humor and every craziness in families. So Mikael Ray is asking, we all know when we get together, it's so easy to talk about our crazy family, but was it difficult to share this with your family, or did they fully embrace the craziness they are?
It's, I think right now when it's beautiful to see that most of us are talking about mental health, and we're actually talking about anxiety, or like there's a naming now, because Cynthia, especially if you come from monolingual Spanish speaking households, people use words like different metaphor or different poetic, I would call it poetic ways that they express themselves. Like they'll be like, me duele el corazón, or they'll use nervio, or like sufro de los nervios. And, and then in English, those terms are more clinical, right? Like, oh, I have anxiety, I have, I'm feeling this. So I think right now it's really, I think I do make fun of it, but I think in that making fun, I think it's also very important to also hold our families accountable, so they, when you know better, you do better. And I think part of healing the immigrant family, or healing the undocumented immigrant family, is really setting boundaries of like, hey, I know that you mean well, but I don't appreciate when you talk to me in this way. Or like, I think it would be more effective if you communicated with me in this way, because we already have the country against us. The last thing is us bickering with one each other. One of the biggest things with my family that I have to talk about, and I think even in university settings, or we like to use the word chisme and as as a fun, cute thing, right? Which it is, if it's el gordo y la flaca and all of that. But at the end of the day, I always I have to be very careful with that, because I tell my family that oftentimes a lot of that is projection, and a lot of that it's insecurity. And when we do speak about other people, especially family members, that creates a dynamic of hostility that we need to really get rid of. So I'm very careful about girl, don't talk to me about we talk about ideas, we don't talk about people, because I think that's the purpose. And I'm not a therapist or anything. I'm just I just don't want drama in my life. I already have enough. So I think, it's important for us to laugh and have those cultural exchanges and moments, pero también set boundaries with our families para que, we live a little bit more at ease. That's the goal.
Oh yeah, healthy boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And also, my mariposa has asked, what's your abuelita's name? Does she know how fabulous you are and about your work?
My abuelita is so funny. My abuelita's name is Mardonia. And she doesn't, sometimes I'll be on live and I'll bring her in, and then she says things and I'm like, oh, we have 78 people watching us. She's like, oh my God, they're gonna think I'm rude. And I'm like, girl, it don't matter, they're rude. But I think, or it's funny because I think she's been the sort, I think one of the things it's very interesting with elders is that they're very, I think our culture with elders or viejitos, we're in our culture, girl, that we all cried when we saw that movie Coco, and it's because I don't know about elders. And I think for her, she feels the love that a lot of people on Instagram, when I post pictures of her, they're the most ones that get most likes. And I'm like, ew, girl, that's my page. But it's because people have this people miss their grandparents or that bond with that, that generation. But I think right now she's learning a little bit more that people are watching her and know who she is when she goes to the store. But now I have to teach her not to be too trusting, because the other day she said somebody wanted to give her a ride because they knew her from Instagram. And I was like, girl, don't be getting in rides with strangers. So if you see my grandma in the streets, do not be offering her no rides, okay? But she's loved. We have a couple of art. She's actually going to be a mural. She's going to be in a mural in San Francisco. So it's going to be really exciting to take her, because the pandemic has been very difficult on her, because she's a social butterfly. She can't see nobody. Thankfully, she's already fully vaccinated, but I think that's going to be the first instant where she kind of sees wow, people are actually thinking about me and I'm going to be in this mural. So yeah. And if you haven't called your grandma today, girl, call her. Cuando ella sí chismea, girl, deja que hable de la gente, but just don't spread it.
Looks like we have a question from Jonathan too. It seems you have a very healthy and positive attitude towards life. How do you manage the negativity in the current events or negative reactions to your work?
I know it's just very well. One, for my work, I don't read the comments, and I'm very aware. I'm a Virgo, so I'm very aware of my shortcomings and my pitfalls. Okay, so there's nothing you can tell me that I already do not know. If you tell me that poem sucks, I'm probably gonna respond, yeah, I know. It's only its third draft, but trust and believe it's gonna get better. And in terms of a positive attitude towards life and events, I just feel like I've already been through so much. My formative years were a lot that at this point, I just want to I feel like, yes, I do get sad and I get depressed and I have anxiety. I was just ranting about sometimes my hair falls out because of my high stress. But I think right now, I have just a lot to be grateful for. I think I think about all those things that I'm very grateful for, and I don't take them for granted. So I think that helps me keep a good positive. And also my friends, I have a lot of friends that we call it trauma bonding, where are they really your friends, or you're just hanging out with them because you don't have to explain where you come from? And so I have a lot of friends que somos bien desmadrosos, and I think that helps when you're around people that you just don't have to break things down to. Or when people are like, girl, they passed this anti-immigrant legislation. Are you sad? I always tell people like, girl, if you have immigrant friends, undocumented friends, and you already know that there's some bullshit happening politically, just buy them flan, buy them a dessert, and just here, girl, eat your feelings. But yeah, I try to be as positive as possible because I mean, laughter. I like to laugh. I don't want to be sad. But if you're predisposed to be sad, girl, sit in it. Do it. But just know that there's a lot of us out here rooting for you, and we are supporting, and we want to see you win. A galleta payaso.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say to a conchita. And Mariana's asking, where'd you get your jacket? The question on
Okay.
everyone's mind right now.
This jacket is a designer from Los Angeles. Her name is the designer is Ikiwa, and it's made out of the girl. I'm sweating under here, but you know, fashion over comfort. It is made out of a cobija, and it's like a blanket, but look, popping. So it's definitely one of those statements at the panaderia that the señoras want to steal from me, but I'm like, girl, you gotta buy it. But yeah, supporting local Latinx designers. So Cobija San Marcos, otro throwback. Yeah. Ekiwa on Instagram. But yeah, honestly, I'm very, very grateful because, you know, I feel like a lot of us are representing, you know, across the country, and there's so much cultural, like it's so different being in California to being in New Mexico or where you grew up, you know, it's vastly different experiences. But like I feel like there's something specific about the human condition that, you know, I think it surpasses all of that. So I think with, you know, the things that Jody writes about, the things that I'm trying to write about, what I'm trying to get to the core is like, how do I, you know, Jody was talking about being vessels of, you know, a person, like, you know, we're vessels of energy, we're vessels of like how people view us. But ultimately I would like to believe that I tell my grandma all the time, right? That my mission in life is to make it enjoyable, to enjoy what's around me, to have pleasure, to celebrate, to dance, to be around the people that I want to be around. And that's the purpose. And yes, we've come a long way from the hurt, from the pain, from the trauma, but I don't want that anymore. So I've been trying to tell my grandma how to. I was teaching if you want to do something, teach your grandparents the story arc of how a story goes. Because I was telling my grandma, I'm going to tell you how to. Because my grandma, she used to go to sells Jafra, and she used to go to these conventions where they teach women how to speak in public. And she's like, oh my God, I'm learning how to speak in public. Now I can do what you do, and I can tell stories to the public. And I'm like, yeah, I think you can do it. So we're practicing. And I'm like, okay, tell me a story. And she was just, you know, our parents, they're crisis. Like my life has just been so tragic. I'm like, girl, can you throw like one fun anecdote in there, a moment of joy, so we could not just be a whole Rosa de Guadalupe episode the whole way. So I think right now we're learning how to manifest or how to call upon those memories that sometimes get buried under all the trauma that we've lived. So I'm really grateful for that I grew up with her, because in the way she's also teaching me, you know, the longevity of life, and knowing that I'm still young. I still have my grandma's 86. Like she's been through so much. I still have well equipped to go. So I'm always grateful for her. I think she's the source of my inspiration. She's definitely that. So if you do have elders or, you know, family members or people around you, I know that sometimes son bien enfadosos, but you're probably enfadoso too. So just, you know, talk to them.
Yes. ¿Y dónde anda? Where's her surprise guest appearance?
My grandma is downstairs right now, probably calling Mexico on WhatsApp. You know what I had recently had to do is delete her friends from those things, because I don't know if you're aware, but there needs to be another case study on Señora conspiracy theories on WhatsApp, because they be out here setting them chain letters, girl. They be scaring everybody. So
Yes.
put the parental controls on WhatsApp for your immigrant parents.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. We also got another question from Jonathan Moreno. He asked, is there any website or book or social media page you'd like to plug?
Yeah, right now I'm on Instagram as Yosi-Rey, Yosirey, Yosi-Rey. You can find a lot more. I produce a lot of the poems, I make them into videos. So you can find a lot of those videos on YouTube and my website, just yosimar.com. And then if you really want to read something, I don't have a book yet, but I'm on the process of that, and my one-man show, and have a lot of projects that are coming up. But if you do want to read Carla Conejo Villavicencio's book, The Undocumented Americans, I'm telling you that you're not going to regret reading this book. It's so beautifully written, and it's just a masterpiece. So yeah, read those. Oh, and if you're I also have the Yosi book club. Should you be a nerd like me and you're always looking for book recommendations, you can follow me online, and I'm always posting new books that are coming out. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you. Before we close, and if you can close us with another poem of yours, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to everyone who helped put this event together. To Jody, the student presenter, for being here, Sarai for moderating, to Emily and BJ as interpreters, to Chicano Programs and ASNMSU, and GSSWA, the officers and representatives who are watching live, and all the community here. So thank you. And Yosimar, huge thanks. Thanks for bringing, life into this screen and sharing it and blasting it. And Jonathan, for blasting it on live. So if you want to close us off with a poem, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so this poem, it's a short poem. I titled it Prieto. I'm from Guerrero, Mexico, which is southern Mexico. We're cute, short, and dark. And so I wrote this poem because it's just an interesting word. But I think it took me a long time to really love, the shade of my skin, and to really, I think with us, to acknowledge where we come from and the magic that all of that is. So I really carried that with me. So I wrote this piece called Prieto. I'm dark, not like my primos and primas who are light. I'm what happens when water falls on dirt. Mud color hair, mud color skin with Indio black hair. I'm big lips like Abuela Minga, who I've never met. I'm like casitas de barro in Guerrero. It is the skin that tells people that I'm not from here, that I come from a place closer to the sun. It is the skin that makes people want to talk to me in broken Spanish. What is your country like? They ask, but there is no answer. I'm dark, not blanco or negro. Prieto, they say, prieto como el maíz. So yeah, muchas gracias for having me. And thank you so much for, finding yourself within the poems. And again, should I ever be a resource to you, or you need something, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me. I always end my talks by saying God bless America, and I pledge allegiance, just in case somebody's watching. So, thank you so much, and God bless America.
Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much, Emily and BJ, for the beautiful translation and trying to keep up with how fast I talk. I'm so
Yes, thank you so much. I think that is done. If you all want to stick around a little bit, and for everyone watching on live, thanks for joining. And go celebrate Latinx week.